river, and the crazy thing about this river is that this water was just snow melt. So the water was snow melt up in the mountains, and now it's floating down this river, and this water floating down the river will eventually get to the Pacific. So I wonder what will happen once it's down in the Pacific Ocean. Well, welcome to your secrets lesson video, and let's meet Huckleberry for the review from last week.
Hello and welcome to lesson 6 of secrets. So before we get started, let's do a quick review of last time. Last week we talked all about survival of plants and animals. So we learned that habitat is where an organism lives. And there's 3 important things that an organism needs from its habitat. They need food, water, and shelter. Without those 3 things, they don't have a very good habitat. We also learned what an adaptation is. That's something that a plant or animal has or does to survive in its habitat. So if it's something that they have, we call that a physical adaptation. If it's something that they do, we call that a behavior.
Awesome. Adaptations are pretty neat. I wouldn't be able to hold my paddle if it wasn't for our thumbs. The secret for this week has to be in this pile of boats somewhere, or gear. Aha! I think I found it. We got cycles. A chain of events that leads back to where it started. So the cycles, banner, cycles starts like it sounds like an S, but it actually doesn't. That one always gets me. It starts with a C. So maybe the cycles should go under the C. There we go. So the action for today goes like this. Cycles.
A chain of events
that leads back to where it started.
Okay, let's do it again. This time, let's do it rock star style. My favorite one.
So get out your air guitar, or maybe you're more of an air drummer. Maybe you're playing the air keys.
Cycles! A chain of events.
chain of events.
A chain of events
That leads back to where it started.
that leads back to where it started. Wow, 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 wow.
That leads back to where it started.
Woo!
Well, here I am in the forest. Just me, Tardigrade Jones, the brave ecologist and adventurer. I'm searching for the secret that keeps this ecosystem going. I'm sure the secret thing is powerful and wonderful. If only I could figure out what it is. Maybe the secret's over here, in that part of the forest. I think I'll investigate. What is that? Stop! What is that? Stop! Come down! Stop!
It's me, precipitation. I'll make water fall from the sky. I can snow, sleet, hail. Mr. Fog. I think I'll make it rain.
No! Come out! Precipitation, stop!
Don't worry, Tardigrade Jones. My sunlight and wind will heat you up and dry you off because I'm evaporation. I make water droplets turn into gas and rise up into the clouds.
You forgot one thing, evaporation. Clouds can still precipitate again.
No, stop! Jeez, stop it! Why did you do that again, precipitation?
Because we're a cycle. We're a chain of events that leads back to where it started. In other words, we get to do it over and
No,
over.
okay, I get it.
I
get it. Thanks for teaching me about the water cycle. I'm out of here. Oh my gosh. I'm still searching for the secret to this ecosystem. Hey, what a cute little coyote pup.
Will you play with me? My mommy and daddy are out hunting for dinner because I'm too little to hunt for myself, but I'm bored and I want someone to talk to.
Sure! I will tell you a story about yourself. I think that when you grow up, you'll be big and strong and you'll be able to hunt yourself. In fact, you'll be so big and so strong that another coyote will fall in love with you. One day, you'll have coyote pups of your own.
Then I'll get to do the hunting for them, but what happens next?
Well, eventually every little living thing gets old and dies. And when that happens, your body becomes part of the soil cycle. But your pups will make more pups, and life will keep going.
This is an awesome life cycle. What a cool way to keep a species going. Does everything have a life cycle? Salmon and insects and trees and bears and flowers and
yes.
mosses?
Okay, everything has a life cycle. Okay, I'll see you later, coyote. I gotta keep searching for the secret to this ecosystem. This is the last section of the forest. I sure hope I find the secret to the ecosystem here.
Thanks for the carbon dioxide, Tardigrade Jones. I was running low and I could not photosynthesize without it. Since I couldn't photosynthesize, I didn't have enough sugar or energy. Tell you what, you keep breathing out carbon dioxide and I'll keep using it in photosynthesis. And I'll keep making oxygen for you in return.
Wow! That sure sounds like another cycle. I like it. It keeps us both going. I've traveled so far and learned so many things, but I still haven't learned what secret thing keeps the ecosystem going. And look, I'm right back where I started. I've done nothing but make a big circle.
Tardigrade Jones, it's not just one thing that keeps the ecosystem going. It's lots of them. And even though you're back where you started, you've learned a lot along the way. Think about it.
Well, I learned about the water cycle and the life cycle, the carbon dioxide and the oxygen cycle. Wait a minute, are you saying that cycles are what keep the ecosystem going?
Exactly. Without cycles, everything would just stop. And the community in the forest would no longer exist.
Wow, so I did find the secret that keeps the ecosystem running. I'm gonna go search for more cycles. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah!
So we're gonna draw a shape to help us explain the life cycle. And what shape do you think we should draw? Not a square, not a triangle. I think we should draw a circle. Okay, so we're gonna draw a big circle. Awesome. So what do you think the first phase in a life cycle is? Well, it's birth, right? In order for a life cycle to begin, the beginning of any life starts with a birth. So the coyote in that skit was a pretty young coyote pup, right? So he was in that first phase of his life cycle. Totally. Okay, and so the birth phase can look really different depending on what organism we're talking about. So for humans, our birth phase is a baby or an infant, right? For birds, they start their life as an egg and then a chick that hatches from the egg. Insects also start their lives as little eggs or larvae, right? And plants start their lives as seeds. So the birth phase looks pretty different for different types of organisms, but every organism has a birth phase. Awesome. So what happens next? After you're born, you start to grow up, right? So our next phase is going to be growth. And that's the phase that you guys are in right now, right? So for humans, we have babies that grow into toddlers, that grow into children, grow into preteens, and then teenagers. So they're all in different phases of growth. And I think a lot of you guys might have studied the life cycle of a salmon, maybe in 4th grade. So you learned about all the different growth phases of a salmon. That there's fry and alvin and sac fry, those are all different growth phases for a salmon. Cool. So after growth, what happens? Well, eventually, all organisms reach the adult phase. So that's when they're fully grown. So that's the phase that I'm in, that your parents are in, that your teachers are in. They get to be adults, right? So how do we complete this circle? What happens after adult? So after you're an adult, you keep growing, and then eventually everything gets old and dies, right? So if you die, we're going to say that you leave the circle. So everything has a death phase, all animals and all plants, right? But then how do we keep this circle going? How do we keep the circle a circle? Well, organisms have to make more organisms in order to complete the cycle, right? So we call that phase reproduction. Reproduction. Right. So that's when organisms make more organisms and the life cycle keeps going. Let's move on and talk about another cycle that was mentioned in the skit. So, one other cycle that was mentioned was the water cycle. And there were a couple characters that were representing different stages of the water cycle. And one of them had a spray bottle. So let's start there with precipitation. So we're going to start right here on our cycle with precipitation. So precipitation is when water is falling from the sky in some way. So let's think of some different kinds of precipitation. The most simple one is probably rain, right? So let's draw some raindrops. And precipitation can also come as snow. Draw some snowflakes. It can fall as hail. Draw some little hailstones. Maybe mist or fog. Lots of different kinds of precipitation, right? So where does this precipitation come from? We're going to work a little backwards here. Precipitation comes from the sky, right? And more specifically, it comes from clouds. So up here, I'm going to draw a big cloud. And the way that clouds are formed is something called condensation. And that's when water droplets come together. And when they get really heavy, they fall out of the sky as precipitation. So here is condensation. That word's so long it barely fit in the cloud. Okay, so we go from condensation to precipitation. And then where does all of that water go? Well, we just call this phase down here storage. So that's where all of the water is stored on Earth. And there's lots of different places that water's stored. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. But so water's stored in all of these different reservoirs on the Earth. But how does it get from the Earth up into the clouds? Does anybody remember that word? It starts with an E. Evaporation. Evaporation. So that is when liquid water gets turned into a gas form and it goes up into the clouds. So to represent that, we're going to show some squiggly arrows going upwards, right? So now we have our completed water cycle. And to help us remember the water cycle, we have a little chant. So everybody, take your hands right now, put them out in front of you and kind of low like this. And in this chant, our fingertips are going to become little water droplets. So let's start them way down low. And we're going to start here with evaporation. Right? So it starts evaporation, and we go up into the clouds, and then we have condensation, and then that water comes back down to earth as precipitation, and then storage. And then we go huh, and that huh reminds us that this is a cycle, and it starts all over again. Water cycle chant all together. So remember, our fingertips are going to become water droplets, and they're going to start down low. And we start with evaporation, condensation, precipitation, storage. Huh. And the huh reminds us that it's a cycle, so we do it again. So let's do this together 3 times, and we'll start really slow and get faster each time. You ready? Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, storage. Huh, a little faster.
Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, storage. Huh.
Really fast.
Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, storage. Hooah!
So what are some places, think for a minute, that you can think of where water is stored on Earth? Well, one really big one is the ocean. There's tons of water in the ocean, right? There's also a lot of water in rivers. We have a lot of rivers near us here in the gorge. And we're going to include streams in with rivers. Also lakes. Water can also be stored up in the clouds, right? There's lots of water up there. Where else? I know that water can be stored underground, so that's called groundwater. Groundwater. And water's actually inside of us. We're made of a lot of water, so water can be stored in animals. Water is also stored in plants. Where else? What about on the tops of mountains or at the North and South Pole where there's ice? That ice is called glaciers. And there's a lot of water that's stuck there. And let's think one more. And this one's pretty important. There's a lot of water that's actually found in the soil that plants can use. Okay, so those are different places water's stored. Now Steelhead's going to show us an activity in a little bit that has to do with all of these storage places for water. So today we talked about the life cycle and the water cycle, but there's lots of other cycles out there too. Some examples that I can think of are the seasons, so how we move from spring to summer to fall to winter, and that keeps on going. Also the cycles of the moon. Every month, the moon goes through all of its phases, and then that repeats every month. Also, the cycle of every day. We go from day to night to day to night. That could be a cycle too. So take a minute to think of a cycle of your own that happens naturally on Earth. Well, that's it for your lesson today. Now on to Steelhead for some fun activities.
Whoop-a-doo. Here we go, more secrets. The water cycle, cycles, water cycle, life cycle, soil cycle, lunar cycle, tidal cycle, the day and night cycle, the seasons, all kinds of cycles. All right, this next one, this is a demonstration that's going to show you how water is moving through the water cycle. So what I've done here, I came to my son's sandbox And I built a mountain, this big pile of sand. Up near the top of the mountain, there's a lake. And there's a little waterfall flowing out of the lake down a river into the Octopus Ocean. All right, so I'm gonna put some water. I'm gonna have a cloud come moving in. The cloud is gonna rain into the lake. Whoop. Okay, so the clouds move off the ocean into the mountains. As they hit the mountains, all that water gets squeezed out of the clouds. It rains down or snows, fills up the lake. Then the lakes start flowing out down the rivers into the oceans. Then all that water evaporates up off the ocean, moves over to the mountains, precipitates down right into the storage. Let's do the water cycle chant again. Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, storage. Huh. Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, storage. Huh. Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, storage. Huh. Okay, this next activity, you're actually gonna make a game. You're gonna build a game. Okay, the idea of this activity is that you're pretending to be a tiny little water droplet and you're going on an incredible journey. You're going on a journey as this little water droplet, traveling around to all these different places where water can be found. And all you need for it is a piece of scrap paper and a pencil. If you wanted to add color, you could do that. So if you had like 9 or 10 different colors to choose from. If you have a piece of string, that could maybe be helpful. Maybe a paper clip. But all you really need is a piece of paper and a pencil. On that paper, you're gonna draw a circle. Okay, so you draw a circle, then you need to split your circle into 9 different spaces. They don't have to be equal. I made mine as equal as I could. I did a little bit of guessing in how to get 9 different pieces of the circle. And in them, in each space, you're going to write these things like ocean. You're gonna write ocean, oceana, river, or rio, animales, or the soil, suelo, or the clouds, nubes, or plantas, glacier, glaciar, lago, lake, or the groundwater, agua subterraneas. The groundwater is water that's way deep down underground, like 100 feet or so underneath the ground. There's water. Those are 9 different places where we could find water. Then if you're using color, I just assigned each one a color that I felt like using and what I had available to me. Then what you're gonna do is you take, you could either use a pencil with a paper clip in the middle to spin, but you just wanna be able to have something that can spin, and you're just gonna randomly see which area you land on. Okay, after you're done doing all of your spins, you're writing a story about your journey as a water droplet. So that's why I wrote down the places that I went, the 11 spins that I did and where I went each time. Now when you're writing your story, you're getting creative about your journey as a water droplet, and you're using words like evaporation and precipitation. Okay, so maybe my story goes, being a water droplet is tough, especially when you're starting off your life in a frog. Because when frogs get scared, they will pee. And I got peed out into a lake. Well, while I was in that lake, all of a sudden, I felt like I was floating, and next thing I knew, a deer had licked me up. So I was inside of a deer as a little water droplet being carried all over the place, and we kept going up and up and up until I found myself falling out of the deer's mouth and onto a glacier. Now I stayed in that glacier for thousands of years until suddenly it started getting warmer and warmer and warmer, and I again felt weightless as I evaporated into the clouds. Well, when your head is in the clouds, you can travel all over the place and see some beautiful sights until the cloud grew big and dark and angry, and I precipitated down into the ocean, where I got caught in a current and was suddenly riding on the back of a sea turtle named Crush. And Crush and I were cruising all over the place until Crush was laying eggs on the beach, and I made my way down into the groundwater, way deep down underground. And it took a lot of work to climb back up where I was able to help a plant photosynthesize, and eventually found the end of my story in the soil next to a worm. So be creative with these stories, have fun with them, okay? Get creative with how you make this. If you want to make one of your areas bigger, like the ocean is most of the world, so you could make the ocean really big if you wanted to. Think about where you're going, how you're getting there, and have fun with it. Another activity is thinking about or looking and see how many places that you can see or can think of that have water. So in this screen right here, I can see 1, 2, 3 places at least that have water. Oh, there goes 4 places, and then I know of 2 more places. How many places can you find that have water? You know that there's water stored in where you're looking. We'll look forward to the next video. And remember, keep calm, get your outdoors on.